Seat, please. We're going to get started. So, good evening. Welcome to the Anacortes Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Annual Candidates Forum. My name is Jessica Stickles. I am the new president and CEO of the Anacortes Chamber of Commerce. And today's forum will provide a revealing look at the primary races of the Anacortes School Board, Hospital Commission, Port Commission, Anacortes City Council, and Anacortes Mayor race. I'd like to go over a couple rules of today's forum. Please turn off your electronic devices. The forum is being recorded, and it will be shown on Channel 10, as well as the City of Anacortes' YouTube channel. It will be live streamed as well. We ask that the audience members do not record the forum. We have invited all candidates from each race, and this was done by email and phone calls. The candidates will be seated next to their opponents in each race jurisdiction. We ask that you please hold your applause until the end of each race. The public was solicited for questions prior to the forum, and due to the large number of candidates, questions will not be taken from the audience during the forum. All accepted questions had to be applicable to all candidates in that race. For our introduction statements, in each race, we'll begin with a 2-minute opening statement by each candidate. To maintain the Chamber's reputation of impartiality, the candidate to speak first for each race was chosen by coin flip prior to start of today's meeting. Government affairs questions. Following the opening statements, our candidates will be asked a series of questions developed by our Government Affairs Committee. Alternating first response positions, each candidate will be given a 2-minute response period to the question posed. Candidate-to-candidate questions. In the second segment of the mayoral race, the candidates will pose their own question to their opponents. In this segment, each candidate will have 1 minute to pose their question, and their challengers will have 1 minute to respond. Timing. Helping our panelists track their response times is Harriet and Margaret from the League of Women Voters. They will signal when the candidates have reached the 1 minute, 30-second, and stop, and when their time is up. If you do fail to stop, you will hear a gentle notification bell to let you know. We also have our ushers today, Bunny and Sally from the AAUW. They will be assisting the candidates up to the front to keep our timing on point. So let's go ahead and get started. If we could get the school board candidates up to the stage. While they're going through the microphone training, for the introductions, we'll start with Meredith, and they will be given 2 minutes for each introduction. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Meredith Mcmoyle. I am the proud wife of Sean, who works at Anacortes Automotive, so some of you know him. He takes good care of you. I have 2 young boys going into 8th and 5th grade in the school district, and we've been here for almost 20 years this fall. I am the director at the Anacortes Arts Festival, and it is a dream of all dream jobs for me. So I love collaborating with our community and bringing such joy for a weekend every year. I may frustrate some people in running for school board because I don't have a platform or agenda coming into this. I really pride myself in being a community collaborator, someone who listens, someone who works really well with others, even those who I don't agree with or who I'm not necessarily super comfortable with. I want to bring my experience with the Anacortes Arts Festival Board, other boards that I've worked on, and my volunteer experience in the classroom where I've seen students and teachers working together over the last decade. I want to take that to the school board where I understand that the school board will be there to set high-level policy, to develop a strategic plan, and walk hand in hand with the administration in making this district the best that it can be for our students. And at the end of the day, I want to keep asking, what can we do better? Thank you.
Selise.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Selise Stevens, and I'm running for Anacortes School Board Position 1. I'm the daughter of 2 Air Force veterans, the oldest of 5 kids, and I graduated from Texas A&M University with a Bachelor of Science degree in Industrial Distribution, which is just a combination of engineering and business. Upon graduation, I was commissioned in the United States Marine Corps and went on to fulfill a lifelong dream to fly jets for a living. So I flew EA-6B Prowlers as an electronic countermeasures officer for about 8 years. Was that for me? Okay. So at the end of my career, I married my husband, Michael, and we had 3 kids in 3 years. They're all teenagers now, and in 8th grade, sophomore, and junior years of high school. We are so grateful that they've been able to grow up in this Anacortes School District, and we look forward to using that experience that we gained navigating the district to help other families. So we're so proud all over the country, and we had the opportunity to stay here as business owners for the last 9 years, which has been very fulfilling work. Over the past few months, I've heard from a lot of parents some very serious concerns about the experiences their kids are having in the classroom. And as a school board member, I pledge my very patient listening ear. I will ask the right questions to the right people in order to help find solutions to those concerns. As a board member, I look forward to participating in policymaking that not empowers empowers our teachers, but also allows for a maximum amount of participation from parents. At the end of the day, it's the kids that matter. And making policies that provide a very fair environment for every child, no matter what they look like, or what their preferences are, or what kind of clothes they wear, or who their parents are, none of those things matter. Every child deserves those fair opportunities. Thank you so much.
Anastasia Brendick is not able to be here with us today, so in her place is a proxy to read her 2-minute opening statement.
I'm Susan Rooks, and I'm reading tonight for Anastasia. As a military kid, I went to schools both statewide and abroad. I was the kid who desperately wanted to fit in, but each school had different ideas about what being a successful student was. What I loved is being with other students who were from all over the world, having different ideas about what the world is and what holds for us in the future. I have found that the best approach to educating our children lies in the diversity of experience, both academically and socially. It is my belief that exposure to all points of view and student experience enhances the learning of all. My wife and I are dedicated to ensuring this sort of opportunity for our 2 children and for yours. As your school board member, I will support diversity, equity, and inclusion in the next 5-year strategic plan so that all of our children are seen, heard, and met with equality learning. Advocate for better ways to communicate with families so that all families get clear and consistent information equally. Maintain and create new opportunities for students to access mental health services, supporting fully the social emotional learning component to their learning, and prioritize the continued efforts to implement mentorship for BIPOC LGBTQ+ students so that they too will feel seen, heard, and supported. Place our English language learners in classrooms with consistent access to ELL teachers so they thrive in their learning. Advocate for the special needs of students from military families, migrant families, and students experiencing homelessness so they don't fall through the cracks. And lastly, identify and address the needs of all our learners at all levels, committing to using best practices while simultaneously committing to dismantling inequitable and therefore ineffective programs. As a district, we care passionately for the education.
Your time is up.
I'm sorry.
No.
Thank you very much.
Diana.
Hi, I'm Diana Farnsworth, and I'm running for position 2. I am so grateful that you're all here this evening. I am first and foremost an educator and a librarian, and I have spent almost a decade here in our community that I always wanted to live in. I got to come here sooner than I thought, and I have had the opportunity to work with so many great organizations, and particularly to partner with our school district. And I had the wonderful opportunity to go to school to become a librarian because I received a scholarship from the Anacortes Schools Foundation, so I already knew I wanted to give back and participate. And then I had another great opportunity and was able to find a partnership opportunity where we did a student card for every single student in our school district. And that was my first introduction to thinking about equity in learning, because teachers would not bring their students to the library because there were some students who didn't have a card, and that was inequitable. So I have gotten really invested in our school district, and I have figured out that I want to be here to support our students first and foremost. I want to make sure that they have excellent education, that they have equitable opportunities for success. I want to learn and work with our teachers. I am so thrilled to be endorsed by our teachers union here, and I want to continue to support them in their work. And then thirdly, I want to connect with the community. It's been a rough year. We all wanted to see each other more, and I think we learned that we want to all be involved more. I spent a lot of time in the last 5 or 6 years on different school committees, working on the current strategic plan, and I look forward to be able to do the same in this capacity if I'm elected. So I look forward to serving you. Just to answer a very important question, I do not have children of my own, but my entire career has been dedicated to educating them. So I look forward to doing that for all children.
Thank you. Eric. The timer has a mind of its own.
Sort of reminds me of being at home myself with my kids, though they come and help me. My name is Eric Shore. I'm running for position 2 as well. I've lived in Anacortes for about 19 years now. I co-own a couple of paddle sport businesses with my lovely wife, Megan, who's sitting in the back of the room. I have 2 kids in the district. One is in 8th grade, and I got to be very careful because at last night's forum, I said my oldest son was in sophomore. He's actually a junior, as he let me know when I got home. It's hard to keep it straight. They grow fast. And I'm running for the board partly because in this last difficult year that we've all had, I've just noticed that it's time to engage to help bring the community together. I myself found myself engaging with our superintendent in a way that wasn't the most productive, and we ended up talking it out, and I learned, hey, we need communication that solves a lot of problems. And I found out that my previous presuppositions were wrong. I'm really excited to engage with the community. I've been on a couple of boards before, the Anacortes Chamber Board. I served on a national board for paddle sports, and I've been on various committees here in town over the last 10 years or so. That's about it. No bells.
Thank you. So we'll begin the questions. They will be read, and then I'll call the name of the first person to answer, and it will be 2 minutes apiece. Question 1, thinking ahead for district technology integration, what do you think Anacortes School District did well with distant learning for students during the pandemic? And what improvements in technology do you think would help our students with distant learning going forward? We'll begin with Selise.
Super, thanks for the question, Jessica. And thinking ahead, we do have to reflect back, because you're asking what did we do well. So last year was definitely a great example of technology and how important it can be for our kids. I would say the first point is that it's been amazing for our kids to have laptops, individual laptops, and that is provided for every kid is an amazing opportunity. It doesn't happen all over the country. I know there were some schools in other states that rolled very smoothly right into a hybrid or online model, and I know that Anacortes was not exactly set up to do that. I know some of the challenges were bandwidth, for the opportunity for all kids to be online at the same time or be hybrid in the classroom and online. Let me clarify that a little bit. That means if you have a teacher who's teaching a class and they have half of their class in the classroom with them, the other class can be at home also doing class together with their entire class, but being able to separate out those students a little bit, keeping consistency of everyday instruction. I think that's something we did really well, and unfortunately, every teacher didn't have the opportunity to do that. How can we help going forward? I know that we're making some changes to the bandwidth this summer, and I think that will play a great role into making things like that hybrid model possible, where kids can have consistent instruction every day, not just 2 days a week. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person, Diana.
Thank you. Well, as Selise said, we were so fortunate to already have the technology levy passed from your wonderful support and to be prepared for that. I got to participate in that a little bit because the school partnership that I mentioned, we were quickly able to expand access, so there were more books available to kids for distance learning. But in all of that, we also saw, I know a lot of parents certainly felt, but it was really hard to know what was going on when we are distanced. We don't get to see each other as much. And so I think the school did a great job. I think they did their best. Nobody could have been prepared for what we had to do. And so firstly, I have just been so impressed by our educators and our administrative team for how they've done. But I think we learned that we could do more communicating. Potentially that means we need to prioritize a communications director or something along those lines that would really focus on making sure that messaging is going out to all parents, that students know their options. I mean, this is true when we're not doing distance learning too. Students need to know their options and families do too. So improvements, certainly making sure that, in my understanding, students were usually able to get internet access because of there were subsidies available for families to have internet. There were hotspots available. There were extra hotspots at the library because we had that partnership. We had a great community that really rallied and supported our students, and our teachers worked very hard to be able to do those hybrid models. Hopefully, we won't be doing full distance learning, but I think we did find out there are more ways to access more programs using that, and so I hope that we continue to grow with what we've learned and adapt and communicate better using those pieces of technology that we have invested in to make sure that our kids are digitally literate, which will serve them for whatever endeavor they have.
Thank you. Eric.
As has already been mentioned, I think that the district did a really good job cobbling together a program, a school, essentially a distant learning school, in such a short period of time under incredible duress, and when they often couldn't be together in person, which is a much better way to sort out problems. improvements would have been, yeah, things like making sure that everyone has enough bandwidth. There was talk of kids that couldn't get on video because they didn't have the bandwidth to do that. So just making sure that we can fill in those gaps moving forward. As Diana said, hopefully we never have to do this again because it was really, really hard on the kids, and the learning gaps only increased, and that's what we have to focus on next year to close those.
Thank you. Meredith.
I think it was such an interesting proof about how reliant we've become on technology, right? We had a internet down day instead of a snow day last year, right? So it's also showing how important it is that this community supports the levies, because without them, I'm not sure what would have happened for the students this year in Anacortes. A girlfriend of mine works for Google, and she was telling me horror stories about districts all over the country trying to get devices in hands of kids. And here, there was this beautiful teamwork that happened. There was, people that usually serve lunch and principals and teachers standing outside in these really methodical, fabulous ways, cheering kids on and handing them devices through their windows. And it happened really fast. So it was really impressive. I know that there was some frustration along the way, but really, if we think about it, impressive about how quickly we adapted, how quickly we got things in kids' hands, and that we really found a way to connect in really cool ways, right? There's this app called Jamboard. And so the kids are going on a Jamboard and now collaborating and throwing up how they're feeling today, and checking in the morning with gifts and all these other things. And it was a great way to find what technology works and what doesn't. So going into the future, I think that's really important for teachers to have some parameters about the model for which they're teaching, so that it's consistent across the district when you're teaching from your technology, so that all the kids are getting the same thing. And I think it's also important to identify which of those, I was thinking I wasn't gonna sound cool because it's like apps or software, or I think there's other words for it, right? But which of those really work for us, and identifying those ahead of time so that the kids know how to use them, the teachers know how to use them, and we're ready to roll if something unfortunate happens like that again. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 2. What is a board member's role in establishing district curriculum? In this role, how will you handle discussions with your community when controversial issues, such as sex ed curriculum, critical race theory, or the reduction of advanced placement class qualifications occur? First up, for the 2-minute response, Eric.
I think that making sure that we have proper communication rolled out in advance before these programs are implemented is absolutely vital. I think some of the furor that's erupted over certain things has come from that lack of communication. Not lack, just maybe not as crisp and cleanly rolled out. And so some parents were surprised by I'm looking at the screen here, surprised by all of these different things that would come out. And again, communication is a great tool, but it works best when it's shared. And so making sure that that the families have a voice in all of these decisions that are being made, so they feel like they're a part of the decision making, because that is their right. I think that's important, and listening to all sides on that is also quite important.
Thank you. Meredith?
From my understanding, the board turns to the experts who are the staff at the district and the teachers to bring new curriculum that they've vetted and found best appropriate for our district and for our students. And once we've reviewed that and gotten input from parents and the community, then we agree upon and pass that curriculum, and then we need to support the teachers in that curriculum, because as we're seeing now, there's some backlash to some of the things that have been decided, and it's really important that our teachers feel supported in presenting the curriculum that's already been voted on and agreed upon. I think you, as Eric said, and you're going to hear from all 4 of us, I'm sure it's about communication. The district's in a really tough place with all of the messaging that they have to deliver. I think it's a rational conversation. These things are not taught to, the very controversial things are not taught to our students in this district without the parents knowing about it. So if your child is learning something in a sex education or health education role, that information comes home to you first so that you can review it and you can opt out of it if you'd like. So it's about that communication. I think it's about allowing parents to have input. I love that the administration in this district is willing to take a pause and look at things. I think that speaks really highly of them. They got a great start with a town hall regarding our AP programs a few weeks ago. I think more and more like that, and having the board support the district in those ways by bringing communication to them, more and more communication, more and more input, because these are really tough subjects. And when we get into tough subjects, we need to come together as a community and not fight on the fringes about them. These are our kids that we're talking about. They need an opportunity to learn what is true. They need an opportunity to learn how to think for themselves. And all of these subjects, that's what this does. So I definitely support continued AP programs and challenge programs. Thank you. Selise.
Thank you. So according to the policy for curriculum adoption, I don't remember the exact title of it, but the curriculum director would find or present a new curriculum for the teachers, and as I understand it, the teachers have an opportunity to review it, probably a small group that is in that subject matter. But at the end of the day, the board is required by law to review that and approve it before it's implemented. There are also other things that happen in that process, but even after curriculum has been approved, it is important that part of the law says the board is also required to answer any parents' concerns in a public matter. So publicly, and I think the in-person meetings are always more effective. I would hope that any of the ways that we would like to open up that communication could be maximized by an in-person meeting, whether that be parents at the school board meeting, which might be not open itself up to dialogue quite as much, but to be able to do the community engagement meetings like Meredith mentioned, where you can have even small groups of parents sitting around. The one thing that I think was tough about that meeting is that a lot of parents didn't feel like they had dialogue with anybody that was not at their table. So there were small dialogues happening and there were issues brought up, but I think being able to open that meeting forum up to something that could bring more dialogue, whether it be a small group representative move to the front of the room and then have a chance to kind of represent their table, I think that opens up way more of the discussion about what's going on for the community. The last thing I'll say is that absolutely the curriculum needs to reflect truth and prepare our kids for their future adult life. Thanks.
Thank you. Diana.
Well, a school board member, as has been stated, does not go into classrooms and check on curriculum and how it's going. That would be micromanagement. But what I would do as a board member is make sure that I understood what curriculum we had and what options there were so that I could support our administration. But beyond that, we have a strategic plan process coming up here next year for the next 5 years. And I did work a little bit in one of those wonderful community forums when the current one was implemented. And so we have a history of doing these great community meetings. So I would hope that we would prioritize those, and maybe if for some weird reason we're in a situation where we can't have those really great in-person conversations, more recording of meetings, more opportunities for input. If there is a meeting, lots of opportunities for Q&A, for feedback. I would be available. That's a really important one for listening. I think any elected position, you need to make sure that people know how to find you and share their opinions so that you can represent that. So that is the way that I would handle it. As far as these issues in particular, I'm also very committed to learning before having an opinion on something. And of course, you can never be an expert in all things. So in this kind of advisory capacity, I would make sure I knew the laws. We have state laws, we have federal laws. I'm really excited about a scientifically informed sex ed curriculum. I also know that critical race theory is a postdoctoral area of study and will never be taught in a K-12 system. But I had to look those up, and then I would share that, and I would share those resources so that people aren't wondering and can look at the facts. And I also know that our school provides alternatives for parents so that families can choose. And as Meredith said, making sure that parents know what's being taught and then can have those great supplementary conversations to support those goals. But I would support the policies that we've implemented with community input.
Thank you. Question 3. Which groups of students in Anacortes School District do you think need additional supports and why? How would you help those needs? We'll start with Selise.
Thank you. I like to think of students as a whole instead of dividing them into groups, to be quite honest. I would do for any student what I would do for any other student, and that's to make sure they had a fair opportunity to reach their full individual potential. That said, the additional supports I think that are needed right now really revolve around mental health issues. I know that the school is now partnering with the county for social work individual that would hopefully be able to assist in things like that, and I think those are great opportunities. I know our counselors are empowered to help in certain ways, but I think there are some policies in place that are maybe not allowing them to work to their full capacity, and I would love to see that happening because I think it benefits the kids to the full extent that they're able to help them. The additional support that I think could be also helpful is the support from the community, and I don't want to identify the students that maybe need the help as much as to say, in general, having community support for our students is a wonderful picture of what the success a student is going to have academically. We know that as parents are involved and as community are involved, we automatically increase the academic achievement of our kids, and so that community support involved for it solves so many problems on the mental health level, but it solves problems for tutoring. I know we have a lot of volunteers that come in and do in-class tutoring as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Diana.
I know the question says, which ones do I think need them? And I would say this is an area where I would do my research and learn, because we have some really great people and huge teams that collect the statistics, and statistics don't lie. We do need to know the individual student story, but to identify who needs additional supports, I would rely on we have guidelines, we have Senate bills, we have federal laws, we have state laws, again, that tell us what students need help. So our high capacity students, we are required to provide them a challenging curriculum that keeps them really engaged. So they need that support. Our other special ed students who might have other learning challenges, they might need extra support in one area. So we identify that with our professionals. We make sure that our professionals, our teachers, our administrators have provided the resources, whether that's staffing or funding, to make sure that we can provide that. Other than that, I would do anything and everything to support all, to make sure that we are inclusive and prioritizing diversity and equity for everyone, because we don't all come from the same place. We have pretty disparate socioeconomic gaps in our community. First and foremost, students have to be safe. They can't be hungry. We have to make sure that they have someone to talk to for mental health if they need it, if something's going on. And so we need to make sure we have the structure to support that. And so that is how I would try to make sure that we can raise everybody up so that everybody can achieve their potential. But I would rely on the experts, I would do my research, and then I would share how I'm like a broken record. And then I would share that with everybody so we could be on the same page and know what we were doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric.
From what I've been hearing, talking to teachers and para-eds and families here in town, it sounds like we might be falling a little bit short on intervention and support for students with special needs. It seems like, and I'm still learning about this, after about third grade, there might not be enough support as they go through high school if they have learning disabilities. So teachers, and especially para-eds, they really need more training. They want more training. They're asking for more training. So I'd like to try, if I'm on the board, I want to try and find a way to fund that extra training. From what I understand, something like 40 to 50% of our budget is being spent in classrooms, which leads me to believe that there's 60 to 50% of our funding somewhere in there. We've got to be able to roll up our sleeves and get creative and find a way to fund these programs. There's no reason for a child to have dyslexia and only get help in 8th grade. You know, that seems like there's a lot of time there where those children are being, you know, it's almost like a form of torture if you can't figure out why you're not keeping up with your peers. So that's kind of where I stand. I think that we need to really work on kids with special needs and make sure that we have the support component for them.
Thank you. Meredith.
I think one of the things we have to really look at is early education, access for kids in our community. The science is there to prove that they need us before they get to kindergarten. And I know that's about budget, I know that's about money, but it's a place that we have to spend some time looking. The kids who are having a learning gap and aren't meeting the marks, I know that the new literacy curriculum will help us identify some of those children at an earlier age, which I think is wonderful. I also know that this current strategic plan talks about that 30 to 40% of our population who aren't meeting the marks and who do have a learning gap. So clearly they're a population that need additional support from us. Early intervention for children, like Eric said, with dyslexia and other learning needs. Again, there's new things coming with the literacy program and other ways that teachers can identify these things earlier, so more and more support for that. And then supporting students who don't feel supported, right? Those who are being bullied, those who may have gender identity issues, those who are people of color, whatever that might look like, how do we help them? And it's the mental health that some of the other candidates have talked about. And we have such an amazing mental health program in Anacortes with the community supporting from Island Hospital to Rotary to the police department, you know, all of those things that we have already. And believe it or not, it's not enough yet. So how do we find those things? It all comes down to budget, moving money around, right? There's not an infinite amount of money there. I've had some conversations with district administration about, let me go find some grants. I love grants. I love finding grants. Well, those aren't sustainable, right? So what is sustainable? And so I think that how we can help as the board after we've identified these places is to go out and figure out how you support these things financially, because it's the only way to get it all done. Thank you.
Thank you all for participating. And as the candidates gather their name tents and their water, can you please give them a round of applause? We'll ask the hospital commissioners to make their way up front. Okay, we'll get started. We'll start with the introductions. This allows for a 2-minute response, and we'll start with Warren.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Warren Tesler, and I'm just finishing up my first term on the Hospital Commission and going for my second. And thankfully, running unopposed, I found that's a much easier way to go about it. The hospital, we call it Island Hospital, but it's really a healthcare system. We have the hospital, we have the outpatient care. We also employ upwards of 30 physicians, both primary care and several specialties. We have specialty services such as the cancer center, the wound center, the sleep center. We operate a clinic on Orcas Island. So it's much more than a hospital. Healthcare organizations have evolved like that over time. It's also a $100 million a year operation, and we're the biggest employer in Anacortes. So it's complex. As a hospital commissioner, my job is to, along with the other commissioners, is to see that we have the right leadership in place to see that the hospital and the entire organization continues to be successful and gets through the difficulties. We've been had a lot of difficulty in the last year and a half. COVID, you may have heard of it, and everybody's had their issues, but as a healthcare organization, we've been in the center of it all. We've come through that in pretty good shape, but we have to position ourselves for the future. And with the other commissioners, and we have new leadership in place within the last couple of years. We need to work to, we're just completing 60 years as Island Hospital. We'd like to see ourselves around for the next 60, continue to provide good care and be the healthcare resource, central healthcare resource for everyone in our area. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Do you have a name tent you can put out for us? Paul.
Good evening. I'm Paul Mahn. I'm currently commissioner of the hospital, have been over serving, fortunately, for more than 20 years. I'm here with my wife, Karen, and incidentally, next month we will be celebrating our 63rd anniversary. Okay. The hospital is there to serve this community, and we have a promise that we hope that your health care experience is first served by Island Hospital. And if so, we place all your medical and emotional needs first and foremost. We've done that for a number of years, and we continue to do that as well. So if I'm put back in position number 3, it'd be my job to keep that promise. Thank you.
Thank you. The questions for the hospital commissioner candidates will be 1 minute each due to them being unopposed. Question number 1. With the medical use overlay approved as a development guideline, Island Hospital has continued to expand its physical footprint with satellite clinics, including on Commercial Avenue, instead of becoming a full-service hospital. Do you support this long-range plan? And we'll begin with Paul.
Thank you. Our long-range plan is to build a facility that serves this community. You must understand that we can't do everything. What we would like to be is, first and foremost, primary care. So when you show up at the hospital, we'll either service you with the current capabilities we have, which are, in most cases, superb, or we'll refer you to a well-established secondary physician somewhere in the community or external to the community. So actually, I do support this long-range plan to continue to serve this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Warren.
Yeah, I'm confused by the issue of instead of becoming a full-service hospital. I don't know why you say that, because for the community needs and for our abilities, we are a full-service hospital. We offer primary care, specialty care, surgery, oncology, and that sort of thing. I mean, we don't do heart surgery or neurosurgery, but no place our size does. But, so I mean, it's a curious phrasing. But anyway, we're continuing to offer the services that are appropriate for this community. And those needs are significant and somewhat specialized. We have a much higher proportion of our population is over 65 than is the state or national average. And we continue to seek to meet those services. The Commercial Avenue expansion is an education center, health education center that is sorely needed. So yeah, I fully support what we've been doing, and we'll be continuing to plan to meet the needs as we go forward.
Thank you. Second question. Should Island Hospital explore associating itself with a larger regional or national hospital organization? Why or why not? We'll begin with Warren.
Right now, we're not doing that. We have the resources, and we feel we have the ability to remain independent. That could change. The environment is increasingly competitive. The regulatory environment is always changing and only gets more difficult. It's possible that a well-funded large organization could align with one of our competitors, and that would change the picture. Our plan at this point going forward is to monitor things, to do the right deals at the right time, but we're also mindful of looking at the indicators in terms of financial health and competitive health, and decide, if there is a time to look at those kinds of options, to do that when we're still in a position of strength and a position to negotiate well, not from a position of weakness when it gets to be too late.
Thank you. Paul.
Oh, about 10 years ago, I think you community will recall that we did, in fact, try to set up an association with 2 other hospitals in order to be in a position to associate with a major hospital like Providence. As it turned out, making the story short, the community that you represent here said, no, we do not want to associate with a faith-based hospital. And so that was the end of that. Warren said, in fact, that the rural hospitals are under attack. And if we have to, we will associate with a larger hospital. But it's our intention, clearly, to be as independent as we possibly can and provide the best services that we possibly can to this community, because I think this community deserves a very first-rate hospital. Thank you.
Thank you. Third question. Island Hospital is using an electronic medical records and health records system that has difficulty sharing medical records between other patient providers, such as our regional hospitals. What is your plan to rectify this? And we'll start with Paul.
Thank you. This is a very interesting subject because hospitals across the country basically cannot talk to one another. We're not like General Motors or General Electric, who built a system when they first started that worked. And I think there's something like 25 different EMRs working. And the only way you can patch them together is build a special software thing. What we've done is associate with those groups that in fact we can talk with. And we in fact attempted to build this capability to particularly talk with Skagit. If you can believe it, we do not have the capability to immediately talk with Skagit. And it's because they're working on a different EMR than we are. To rectify this, it's going to have to be a national system to take this over, but there's no current plans to do that, and so I don't foresee in the near future to have this capability.
Thank you. Warren.
Yeah, this comes about from the difficulties of, I mean, you know, some of it from the realities of free enterprise and some of it from the lack of standards being set. When the federal government mandated that everyone move to electronic medical records, they did not develop or mandate a standard for information interchange. So everyone's, you know, it's like the early days of personal computers when if you had an Apple, you couldn't read or write what was going on a PC, on a Microsoft, and vice versa. And we've got that multiplied many times over. You know, we do work with an organization that provides a certain amount of information interchange, but it's not ideal, and this is going to have to develop. And you know, there'd have to be companies outside of us that do that. If we'd gone, by the way, if we'd gone with the same system that Skagit has and some of the others in the area, we would have spent probably $15 to $20 million more to implement that system for a small hospital like us, which was not affordable. But it'll come.
Thank you. Thank you both. And as they gather their name tents and things, please give them a round of applause. I did want to let you know that John Rongren and John Petrick were both unable to attend, and Doug Pratt has withdrawn from the race. So today we have with us Kathy Pittis, who will have 2 minutes for an introduction statement.
Well, thank you, Jessica, and thank you to the Chamber staff and all the volunteers that have put this forum on, and thanks to the City of Anacortes for providing this venue. I appreciate everyone that's come out to attend in person and all those that will be looking at this broadcast in the future and as it plays throughout the year. So thank you again. I need to stay on time, and I don't want that bell to go off on me, so I'm going to read my statement in order to do that. So, as mentioned, I'm Kathy Pittis. I'm running for re-election for the Port of Anacortes Commission seat number 5. I'm seeking a second term to continue to advocate for the Port's core mission, which is to create and retain family wage jobs and encourage economic development. I have the proven experience to balance economics with the environment. Those two things are not mutually exclusive anymore. I have over a 20-year career with the Port of Anacortes, the port industry, and served in several director positions at the port. I was also elected to the Anacortes School Board in 2001 and currently serve on the General Advisory Committee for the Northwest Career Technical Academy and was appointed to the Governor's Southern Resident Orca Task Force representing ports across the state. My peers have entrusted me with the position of president for the Washington Public Ports Association. There are 75 ports statewide, the most of any state in our nation. My role gives Anacortes a seat at the regional, state, and federal table. My role would continue with the executive committee until the end of 2023 as that position follows me, if re-elected. I am proud of my endorsements and will mention just a few. The ILWU Local 25 Longshore Division and Port Maintenance Division, and the IAFF Local 1537, which is your local professional firefighters, and Washington State Representative Rick Larson, along with numerous local businesses. Most importantly, I sincerely hope my proven history of advocating for the Port of Anacortes and our 27,000 constituents with openness and accountability earns your trust and your vote in November. Thank you.
Okay, we do have a couple of questions for you, Kathy, that will have a 1-minute time for your response. Number one, what do you see as the priorities for each of the port's primary operating areas, such as the marine terminal and airport?
So for all of our operating areas, which we have 4, is always, again, that overarching theme of economic development and job creation. Most recently, what we had at our properties is this week a ribbon cutting for our Bartholomew property for Rainier Welding. That was an amazing event that we had. A company that has come that will end up with possibly 40 jobs here already. There's 20. We saw ads roll out last Friday that they are hiring 8 positions at this point in time. And these are not only family wage jobs, these are lifelong career jobs. And that's what we can do to support the economic development, because we know what the multiplier is for each one of those jobs. So that overarching theme goes with it, whether it be the marina, the airport, the marine terminal.
Thank you. Next question. Do you believe that the port's mission statement of economic development should include building a large community event center?
So,
Kathy, you can start.
Okay, so the port's mission statement, yes. As far as a community event center, obviously that's been in the news lately, and the Port Commission, we made a decision, and that's been actually a long decision to put that building back into what its original intent was. And I can tell you from being on port staff, I was the one that wrote the original action items when the event center started. The first event that started in there was the evening in New Year's Eve in 1999 to ring in the 2000 year. Port administrative offices have been there, I think it's since 1932, and no, I wasn't there in 1932. But what's happened and evolved with MJB coming online, that's one component. But a community discussion as to an event center, what does that look like for our entire community? And I think that conversation needs to happen. And we have people that are coming forward, and I've heard some discussion amongst the city, and maybe we'll hear that a little bit tonight. As far as this, I'm looking at, they said my time's up. I could go a long time on this one. The bottom line is, I think we have a lot of partners that need to come together as far as where it needs to be sited and what it needs to look like and what the capacity needs to look like.
Thank you. Question number 3. Can you explain what the port's role is in providing public access to the water?
Well, thanks for throwing me a softball on that one. So my time at the port, when I first started, one of the big projects was Ship Harbor Interpretive Preserve. So there were partnerships with the city of Anacortes and also Evergreen Islands and people like Jim Falk that came forward and put this vision together as far as what that would look like, that we still preserve the environment and still allow public access down to what is like we know now as Ship Harbor Interpretive Preserve right there by the ferry terminal. When you think about our marina, it's an open public marina. Not very many marinas still continue to do that. People have access to all our docks. We have wonderful esplanades. We have Seafarers Memorial Park as well at the end there. So there is lots of public amenity, lots of public access to the water. So we will continue in that role, and that's something that I can actually speak freely for the entire port, is that that's a commitment that we will do moving forward.
Thank you for participating. Please give her a round of applause.
Thank you.
We'd like to call up the Anacortes City Council candidates now. Okay, we'll begin with the introductions. These will be for 2 minutes each, and we'll start with Jeff.
Thank you, Jessica. Because of time, I'm going to go ahead and echo Kathy's comments about seeing you here, and thank you for being here. It's so awesome to be in this room again and see so many people without masks. I do thank you for that. So my name is Jeff Graf. I'm running for the position 4 at-large city council position currently held by Matt Miller. I've been a property owner and a taxpayer in Anacortes since 2004. My daughters have gone to school here. They graduated from here, and my wife works at Island Hospital. I grew up in Southern California in a town not much different than this. When we moved there in the late 60s, and I'm not trying to age myself, but in the late 60s, we had 2 supermarkets and a car dealership. And when I left there to go to college, we had big box stores, and we had every supermarket you can imagine. And I'm not interested in seeing that here in Anacortes. When I graduated from college, I got in the car, drove to Pensacola, Florida, and started aviation officer candidate school. I raised my right hand, swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution, and spent 27 years in the United States Navy. I met my wife, I started a family, and I saw the world. I've lived on both coasts in about 5 or 6 different states. I've lived overseas. I've got proven experience leading large organizations at sea, in the air, ashore, and in combat, succeed, meet their expectations, and manage a budget in excess of $250 million effectively, efficiently, and cost-wise. I hope tonight, when we're done here, I've earned your trust, your confidence, and ideally your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda.
Howdy and good evening, friends. My name is Amanda Hubick, and I am one of your dedicated public servants of the 40th Legislative District, working in the office of State Representative Alex Ramel. For the last several weeks, today and through November, I am working to earn your vote for Anacortes City Council Position 4 to continue to serve you and the citizens of Anacortes. I will serve you with kindness and respect, and I will promise to listen to you tonight and always so that we can learn together. I may not have an immediate answer for your questions, but I love research and I love putting the time and effort into learning what it takes to be an effective policy creator. Because policy made in these chambers by City Council affects the people in this room, but it goes way beyond us. It affects our guests and our businesses, the soil, the trees, and the water. We need good, strong, protective policies and equitable decisions. We need workforce housing. We need to keep people safe, healthy, well-fed, and happily employed. We need to continue to support our local economy, here along commercial, along the working waterfront, and for the folks who either work from home or work for themselves. During my 4 years at the Chamber, I worked with a team of community members and business owners to develop a brand strategy. I see some of y'all in the room here tonight. I was part of doing the research in the island to come up with wording that folks consistently use now, telling stories about our 3,000 acres of forest lands, 64 plus miles of saltwater shoreline, and 5 freshwater lakes, those blue and green spaces that we love to share and promote. We need more pocket parks, more community gardens, and more gathering spaces. And I know I'm only scratching the surface here. I look forward to tonight's questions and to speaking with y'all further. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bruce.
Thank you. Thank you to the Chamber for putting on this great event and this amazing crowd for all being here. I'm Bruce Mcdougall. I'm running for re-election to City Council. And quick fun fact, Anacortes is the only city in the state of Washington that owns and operates its own fiber optic internet service. We did that. I want to thank the mayor for that, the sitting City Council, my terrific partners on the fiber optic committee, Ryan Walters and Matt Miller, and city staff and the entire community for this accomplishment. It really is amazing. I've worked for 24 years in the telecommunications sector, and so my technical background kind of makes me the sort of de facto behind the scenes architect of this effort with developing financial and business models, things like that. To date, we pass about 30%, 33% of the community with fiber optic service, and I'm running for re-election to see the effort through to completion. I'm also running for re-election to build upon success of the last few years. We passed a major update to our development regulations, which encourages greater density and diversity of housing options. We passed a couple of really nice revenue generating measures, which raise revenue for development of affordable housing and increased road maintenance. And we also passed a couple of symbolic but really important resolutions. First, on affirming our support for the Paris Climate Accord, and then one that I co-authored, which was a resolution on diversity and inclusion. Finally, I'm running for re-election to kick off another big project. I want to set the city of Anacortes on a path to being a climate neutral city. This is similar to efforts in Seattle and Copenhagen and Sydney, Australia, where essentially working with community leaders and stakeholders to develop a plan over the next few years with key targets to get us to carbon neutral city operations by the year 2035 and target an 80% reduction in community emissions by the year 2050. This is a big project, and this is something that I think we can do and something that we really must do. So thank you, and I appreciate the support.
Thank you. Sarah.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Holohan. Is that volume right? I decided to be candidate for City Council Position 5 because I feel like the most pressing concern facing us today is addressing climate change. All other issues are interconnected to this immediate challenge. I've lived in Anacortes over 20 years. I worked as a teacher, librarian, manager. I'm the mother of 3 and grandmother to 2, and I care so much about the future for Anacortes, for our children, and for the planet. So I know that so much more can and needs to be done, and it all needs to start right here in the city of Anacortes. Although the crisis seems overwhelming, I think it is really a time of terrific opportunity. An Anacortes Climate Action Plan would provide clean energy jobs, cost savings, and really every decision the city makes really should look at the impacts on the environment, on energy usage, and on livability. We can work with neighborhoods and businesses to make sustainable choices. For instance, planting trees is the most cost-effective measure to combat global warming. And supporting local businesses is really great for lowering our carbon footprint. I want to help Anacortes build a viable future. As Deputy Director for the Mount Vernon City Library, I worked on municipal budgets and planning, so I'm prepared to be on council. I'm dedicated researching the issues, making thoughtful decisions based on community input. So this fall, please vote for me, a person who will stand up for the environment, bring diversity, and will listen to you. And I thank you for thinking about these very important issues.
Thank you. Carolyn.
Thank you. Thank you to the Chamber, and thank you for the citizens attending and watching. And also, I'd like to thank my fellow candidates, especially the ones running for the first time. I applaud your bravery, and trust me, it gets easier. This is sort of my 3rd time in this position. I was appointed to City Council in 2019 to the vacated seat of Senator Lovelit as she was promoted to her position in Olympia. And I also want to thank the people of Anacortes for electing me to finish the term in 2019. So here I am again for the 3rd time, loving this job. It's such a great job. I just want to give you a glimpse into a little bit of what we do at City Council. This is the packet, the famous City Council packet, or soon to be. We get these council members every Wednesday, and they vary. This week's for Monday's meeting is 141 pages. They can be anywhere from 30 pages to hundreds of pages, but this is the homework, which I geek out on. I love this part. So this is where we learn what's happening
And that's only part of it, but that's a really fun part for me. We also do tons of work in committee. I'm on the Planning Committee, the Public Works Committee, the Housing Affordability and Community Services Committee, the Accessible Community Advisory Committee, and a couple others, Parks and Rec. And that's where a lot of the great work happens too. And another part of the work that I love is communicating with constituents, friends, neighbors, people I'm just learning to meet. And I am accessible. I have a full-time job as owner of Bike Spot Bicycle Repair with my partner Nick Stowe. I'm accessible there. I'm always glad to talk. I also have cards on the table with my personal cell phone number and my email address. So that's another favorite part, is being with all of you and learning from you, because that's how we get the best things done, is together. So thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Anthony.
Thank you. My name is Anthony Young, and if you've been watching any of the Anacortes City Council meetings, you'll wonder why I'm still in the same position. I am. This is my normal seat right here. But it's a wonderful seat. I really wanted to tell you how thankful I am to all of you to be able to serve. I know I'm a public servant. I take that to heart. What that means for me is making sure that all of the voices are at the table. Even if you disagree, you try to understand what that means. And to give you a little bit of history about me, for those of you that may not know me, I'm a people person, and if I've not met you already, I look forward to meeting you and sharing a laugh. I moved here 12 years ago with my spouse. He's a general surgeon at Island Hospital, a superb surgeon, might I add. But we believe in community. We believe that our obligation is to try to build a better world by having come through here than it was before we got here. So I'm looking forward to that. I serve on a variety of committees: Port City Committee, Public Works Committee, Library Committee, Parks and Recreation Committee. And for those of you that know me, I really do care about this community. And also, I am one that will stand alone if I fervently believe that it's the right thing to do. And what I'm saying to you is that what we have to do sometimes when you're one of 7 votes up on council is that you vigorously defend your position and you advocate for it. But when it is done, you're one of 7, and your goal, therefore, is to execute the desires of council. We're here to serve all of you. I look forward to working with any of you. As you know, in our small town, they publish your real phone number on the website. Thank you very much, and I look forward, hope I can have your vote.
Thank you. We'll begin the question portion. Each candidate will be allotted 2 minutes to reply. Question number 1, how do you think the city budget has been managed in recent years? And what, if anything, would you do differently? We will begin with Bruce.
I think it's actually been managed really pretty well the last few years. We hit a real scary spot about 15 months ago, where we were looking at the economy kind of collapsing, and because so much of our sort of discretionary revenue is from sales tax, we were looking at potentially major shortfalls. And the staff and the council came together, and the mayor, to put together a number of cost savings initiatives, including putting off spending on sort of like vehicle renewals and other capital kind of equipment replacement projects. We suspended hiring for headcounts, which was painful, to be honest, but you know, we found a big chunk of savings, and we're able to weather the storm, and actually, you know, sales tax and other city revenues made a good comeback to where we're in pretty good shape. As far as prior to the pandemic, the city had actually done a really good job of, we were facing a lot of sort of deferred maintenance on roads and things like that. And we've been able to, like I said, come up with that additional revenue to increase road maintenance spending. And so that's something that I'm really happy that we were able to get done. I don't have a specific as to what I would change right now, actually. I'm looking forward to someday the fiber project, when it's complete and when we've paid off construction loans, it'll actually be a revenue producer for us. We'll be generating a profit off of that project, and so we'll be able to fund some other services that we're interested in pursuing. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah?
I agree that the city budget is very well managed, and I applaud the finance director. I did kind of wonder when the city tried the 2-year budget. I thought that might be difficult, so I'm glad that they are looking at the annual budget. It gives, I think, a little more flexibility to deal with unexpected events as we have dealt with. With the 3 main revenue streams of property tax, sales tax, and utility tax, I think it would be good to have a taxation commission to really analyze a little better how this best can be utilized. For instance, the utility tax, when people were reducing their energy usage, the city lost revenue. So if we're trying to encourage people to be a green city, you don't want to rely on that utility tax necessarily. And we do have a lot of wealth in this town. There's over $4 billion in assessed valuation of property. So I think our city can afford to provide great services. I think with every budget, there's room for improvement in efficiencies, and I would rely on our community, and I would encourage our community to give feedback to the city if they see waste or ideas how to improve. And lastly, I think that we have such a wonderful community, very well educated. We have 1/4 of the population are seniors who love to get involved. Let's use them, let's improve. Let's actually have a citywide volunteer program that's very effective.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Thank you. So I would echo what Bruce has said about the measures that the city took in 2020 to ramp back on hiring and non-essential expenditures, and the city did a great job at that. This year, what we're doing that's a little bit different that I'm really glad about is earlier conversations with department heads to identify their priorities and begin the conversations earlier in the year, which is a fabulous step. Last year, I think we ended up doing it starting in November, so it was a little bit of a push at the end. So ongoing communication that way so we can prepare better. We also have a good savings, or we do have a good amount of reserve funds, which of course we don't want to spend, but I applaud city staff and our finance director for ensuring that we have that in cases of emergency. One thing that we worked very hard this last year for the 2021 budget was to fully fund our pavement management program, and that was a little bit of a struggle, but we have heard from our citizens how important that is, and so council worked very hard to ensure that we had money for that and to keep that funding going forward, because in the past, years ago, we deferred a lot of maintenance, so that's why we're still playing catch up on pavement management. Also, we did a great job in adding some money to a social services budget without taking it from the police department, for example. We were able to fully fund the police department and set aside money for social services. What we're working on now is identifying how to contribute more to our social services network and our mental health services, which are so desperately needed. But we're not necessarily in a position that we know exactly how to do that. So what we're doing on the Community Services Committee is working with service providers around the county, mental health professionals, and figuring out how to do that better. Thank you.
Thank you. Anthony?
You know, I could easily echo much of what my fellow council members and new people have said here, but one of the things that I really wanted to emphasize is looking from this side of the prism, meaning looking at how things are done, looking at how deep the conversation goes by way of budget. The city has been run extraordinarily well. It really has. Are there things that we can do a little different? Sure, it is. But what city that doesn't have that same challenge? And so, you know, when I look at what are our priorities, you are our priority. It's up to you to help convince us that this thing that for which you think is important is very important. So that's what we also here for as public servants, which I keep referring back to. But the thing about it that makes it so wonderful in cities of this size is all of you, the volunteers, the groups, the organizations. A city of this size really couldn't be as illustrious and wonderful as we are without all of you and a wonderful team of people that works behind the scenes. Are there things that we need to work on? You betcha there are. Are we determined to do that? You betcha we are. But the good news is that we are fiscally responsible for your money. We're trying to find ways to use it even twice if we could. We're trying to find ways to even advocate for making sure that our roads are up to date, that we have housing affordability, that all of the people that live in our community have a voice at this table, and somehow we find a way to help them be heard. That's what we're doing. I can promise you that in my role in running unopposed again for my second term, and thank you, I promise you that even if I don't understand and may disagree with you, bring it back to me and tell me what I need to do and what I'm missing. I promise you, you'll be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff.
My number one priority, and frankly, the priority of anyone elected here in Anacortes, their fiduciary responsibility should be the best stewards they can possibly be of your taxpayer dollars, right? The mayor develops and prepares the budget. The city council reviews that. They make decisions on what services are funded and how we fund those. They approve that budget. They send it back to the mayor. She administers that, sends it to staff to execute. I'd like to see more oversight in that process. I think that the city council could probably spend more time. It was mentioned prioritization based on performance. I believe I support any opportunity to increase revenues without increasing taxes. How do we do that? Smart economic growth initiatives, residential development. We find those affordable housing opportunities. We bring people in. We find businesses who want to come here and pay those living wage, family wage jobs so that they can support our tax base so that we don't have to raise taxes. The other side of the ledger is expenditures, right? So we have city services. I'd like to prioritize things in must-haves and nice-to-have buckets with high-use things in the middle. And we challenge our department heads to go in and rack and stack based on priority, based on performance, based on efficiency and value to you, what should be funded and at what levels. And then we take your money and we allocate it appropriately, again, at the end of the day, working towards excesses so that we can put that excess money towards future capital improvement projects, a rainy day fund, or we reduce taxes because we don't need to take as much of your money. I also would like to see more transparency, and I think that the city is working towards that. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda.
I loved that Carolyn held up her notes because I've got my budget notes. I've printed these out and I've gone through it, and I love budgets. I've looked at this over and over and over, and I've thought about, where would I make cuts? And as was mentioned, a lot of the expenditures come from direct city payments. It's the pavement, it's also the salaries of the people that work for the city, and it's the benefits of the people that work for the city. And I think that that's one place where the city can actually be a really strong leader. It's sometimes tough to live and work in this city. And if we can continue to pay employees and staff members fair wages, keep them happy and keep them here, business owners in town know that when you look at your customer base, it takes so much more money to bring in a new customer than it does to keep existing customers. And the same kind of story applies to keeping your employees. When your employees love working for you, they're going to be big advocates. So one of my big priorities to make sure that we maintain good salaries, good benefits. Another thing that I think is just fascinating is how well we actually did with our tax revenue, which is also really fascinating. Like when you pay your retail sales tax, it comes out to 8.5%. The city only actually gets less than 1% of that, and we brought in $4.7 million last year, and we're projected at 4.8. So to Anthony's point of spending it twice, when you go buy office supplies, which is also a line item in your expenditures, buy it locally. If you've got that tax money that you're getting, spend it back in the community. So that's really the only change that I might recommend at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 2. Do you consider it a priority to increase workforce housing in Anacortes? How would you accomplish this? To start us off, Amanda.
This has been something that I've had a lot of conversations about. I sit on the Anacortes Housing Authority Board, and I've been there for three and a half years now, I think, Susan. And it's been fascinating to see all of the good things that Brian and his staff has done. But that's not workforce housing. Workforce housing is something that I'm looking for. As a state employee, I make below AMI. Not much, but I'm making below AMI. And when you think about the definition of workforce housing actually being usually within about 2 to 3 miles of where you work. Granted, I'm working from home, I don't have to go very far right now, but when I do go to my district office, it's a 17-minute walk. We need to find out where people are working, talk to them, see if we can find stuff up and down the Commercial Avenue, if we can expand out to R Avenue, M Avenue, things that people can actually walk and bike to. So it's kind of one of those things where you've got to partner that up. You've got to make sure that with workforce housing, there's good sidewalks, there's good bicycle access, there's plenty of parking. That's another concern that comes in with building more affordable apartment complexes. Where are we going to put everybody with the parking? But if they're able to walk to work, they only really have to drive when they've got to go out of town. The 1/10 of 1% sales tax that we just passed is doing a great job, but I think that we need to think outside of the box. People have talked about the community land trust model previously, where maybe the city can buy the land and then people put equity into just the value of the home. I think that's a really good program. I'd also like to see what more we can do with the multifamily tax exemption that just passed at the state legislature. Anacortes councilmanically approved one because we weren't big enough to take what the state did. State passed a better one, and they are now doing 20 years. So let's look at that.
Thank you. Bruce.
Absolutely, it's a priority to increase workforce housing. So yes, I think it's a difficult task to take on in this community because the dirt is so expensive. One of the best ways that we can try to work with this is just looking at price per square foot, which is going to be relatively consistent. And as the development regulations encourage and they even incentivize for smaller units, essentially if you build smaller units, they are going to be less expensive on a just because of the price per square foot constant. Those smaller units in this community, though, are not necessarily going to be workforce housing either. Oftentimes, they're still going to be to exceed the price that the workforce is able to pay. So other things that I would like to see us look to do is essentially continue those kinds of efforts to provide incentive to encourage smaller units. This has a side benefit of also reducing emissions on a per capita basis if you're trying to heat a smaller unit. Like continued efforts to find ways to generate revenue, to partner with partners like the Housing Authority. Also, I'd like to make sure that we harden our rules around preventing of short-term rentals to basically keep that housing market in rotation for people who actually want to live here. So, thank you.
Thank you. Sarah.
It's interesting because when you use the term workforce housing, it's not super clearly defined, and it's kind of been used interchangeable with affordable housing. So I guess what I do think that I'm really interested in increasing the choices of housing, and we're challenged by the cost of land. So again, I agree with Amanda that some form of land trust is really important. I think the city should immediately stop vacating any public land. There's no reason for the city to vacate land when it's so precious. I would like to encourage diversity. I think most people want to live in a really nice home, not a big box apartment building. And so we need to find ways to put mixed income into similar areas, to develop neighborhoods. I think that taking it to the voters and getting them to vote for the small sales tax increase that was funding the housing was very well appreciated, although I believe it brought in about $500,000, which, as we know, won't go super far. But we can work with the state to try and get some grants and funding as well. I guess, yeah, one thing I do believe with the development or bonus levels of the buildings have to be some kind of control of the rental cost. It can't just be based on size. Size is very interesting because, as you'll notice, the houses that are smaller actually cost more per square footage than a larger, and that's because the cost of, the bathrooms and kitchens are a higher impact. So just because it's small does not mean it's going to be affordable.
Thank you. Carolyn.
Thank you. So a lot of good points have been made already. I would also add that it's very important to have our density close to our services. And that is what the council intended to do with the newly adopted development regulations from 2019 that include the bonus height provision for a certain percentage of units that are a smaller size, hoping that they'll be affordable or more affordable than a larger. And many thanks to our community for being so committed to housing that we voted ourselves a tax increase because we know how important it is. Skagit County has one of the lowest vacancy rates in the state. It's less than 1%. We're one of the worst in the states. So doctors who want to move here to work in Island Hospital, teachers, police officers can simply not afford to live here. They are commuting from very great distances, emitting greenhouse gases, and losing productivity time and spending hours on the road every day. So we need mixed income housing close to services, and we need our multimodal transportation networks in tandem with those, so when we are shopping, when we are dining, when we are going to school and to the library, we can go maybe less than a mile. So that is the idea of the density of development, of course, in the commercial district. And we are revisiting those. There's a moratorium that some of you may know of, so council will be revisiting different ideas how we can best do the density going forward, and I invite you all to participate. That's pretty much all I want to say about that, but our partnerships with the Housing Authority and the Family Center have been super beneficial for so many families, and we still have a lot of work to do, obviously, and I'm glad to continue on that path.
Thank you. Anthony.
My answer is what she said. Just kidding.
Oh, good, we can go home early.
Yeah, thank you. But the truth is that we've been, one of the things about our beautiful city is that we've been willing to have the difficult discussion. We do. And part of that is that we made the decision to try to alleviate this issue that we're having, as we most recently did with trying to have daycare and facilities to be able to help people exist and live here. Quite honestly, when I first got here, I thought, why are we not telling everybody in the world about Anacortes? It was difficult for me to understand why it was sunny outside and they would say that it was raining. I've since seen the light. And so the truth is, I'm not sure whether I am the bridge closer or can we have a little small route to get? What I'm saying about all of that jokingly is that I'm humbled and honored to be here. And there are those other people that want to come here too. So we do have to have the challenging discussion of what that looks like, and what we're willing to do. It's a great ideal until it's sometimes near you, and you're afraid of what it may have an effect on you. The truth is that we have a wonderful community. The public-private partnerships we're working through. We've done some extraordinary things with the Anacortes Family Center. We've got other things that are on the table now. If you have ideas, bring it. But the truth of the matter is there are no easy answers because everybody else would have done it. I believe that we're on the right track, and I'm looking and we're looking for other solutions. So come to the table with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff.
Is it a priority? Absolutely. I've been on the Planning Commission since 2017. I was a part of the comprehensive plan updates to the updates also to the municipal code, Title 19, and we made recommendations to City Council to consider bonus height for affordable, smaller units, for higher density zoning, for ADUs, to help support some of the issues that my friends down the table here have been talking about, and I applaud the City Council for accepting those. You know, our community is growing. If you look at the census data between 2010 and 2020, we've increased about 200 residents a year. At that same time, we've had about 66 or so new housing starts per year. What's interesting about that is 55 of those were single family, only 11 of those were multifamily. I think that's where the disconnect is, right? If we're going to find workforce housing, we're going to have to shift that around. And that's what we tried to do with the Planning Commission and with the City Council's help. So what is workforce housing? So workforce housing, defined by Brookings Institute, is actually, it's not low income housing and it's not federal subsidized housing. It's for moderate to medium income families. And we're talking in Anacortes, that could be anywhere between a $60,000 to $70,000 a year salary, you know, and we need to find homes that are affordable for them. So we're talking about, you know, mortgage payments or rent payments anywhere between $1,300 and $1,900 a month. I did a search on Zillow today, and in Anacortes today, there's less than 5 homes that are at or below an affordability for even a workforce housing wage. To rent, there's 1 home here in Anacortes and there's 2 homes in Oak Harbor. I mean, we need to find housing for them, and I think that the Planning Commission, with the City Council support, has done a good job of trying to find solutions to this.
Thank you. Due to lack of time, we're going to skip question 3, go to number 4. How will you work to improve the long-standing downtown parking issues that have increased with the addition of parklets? We will begin with Jeff.
If anything good came out of COVID lockdowns, I think it was the parklets. I don't know about you, but I think it is kind of fun to be able to eat outside. And I don't think the city has a plan yet to make those things go away. So I think they may be here to stay. But if you look at parking in the central business district, the first thing I think we could do is do away with the back-end parking. I think there's also an opportunity to maybe look at the way the streets are currently configured and maybe go one-way alternating streets, the cross streets on Commercial. That might be something. There are community folks here that are thinking about perhaps multi-story parking structures or things like that. That's the commercial business district. What about South Commercial, right? I think the city, I mean, we're all complaining about the pavement issues, and as we all know, South Commercial is essentially State Route 20, which is the responsibility of the Washington State Department of Transportation. You know, I looked on their website, and they don't have any plans anytime soon to make any improvements paving that street. The city also has some beautification efforts, though, that they're putting forth to try to make Commercial a little more appealing to the eye, if you will. And I accept some of those, but they're going to come with parking challenges as well. If you look at what we did in the comprehensive plan, if you look what we did in Title 19, I think we've made opportunities to create off-street parking to support the businesses that are in the South Commercial District, but we've also talked about, you know, making changes to make the Commercial Avenue you know, a nicer place to drive through and a safer place to drive through for bikers and for walkers.
you. Amanda.
I think I remember asking the same question in 2019 when I was in your place, Jessica, and there were other candidates up here. So parking's been something that's been talked about for a very, very long time. One-way parking, one-way streets with parking on it has been also brought up quite often. It works pretty well in Mount Vernon. I mean, I've gotten really used to driving around that little downtown area, and they don't seem to have much of a parking problem. And the fact that it keeps getting brought up means that whether or not we actually have a problem, it feels like we have a problem. There's been a study done, and everybody said, oh, no, you're fine. But no, we keep talking about it. I would go back to that last question that we just talked about, though, with workforce housing. Again, if we have housing close to employment, if you have housing close to recreation, people will be able to walk and bike if they so choose. And with we're not even in the worst of it right now. I mean, like, one of the things that I heard today, I was on a call with Washington State Ferries, and they're still not at 100%. So when the Sydney run comes back and people, you know, stop over in our beautiful island town like we want them to, parking's gonna get even rougher next year, hopefully, when that opens up. I'd love for us to figure out good parking lots, and also, I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but I know that there are different ways where people can either have an app to tell them where parking is so it feels less frustrating, or maybe we can develop one. Maybe there are signs somewhere in the area. So it's not just putting a Band-Aid on the problem, but it's helping people find things more quickly.
Thank you. Bruce.
First thing I would do is I would ride my bike more. And actually, in all seriousness, I'm a big supporter of the Parklets long term. I think they are a terrific amenity in downtown and terrific for our small businesses. Ms. Hubick did mention that traffic studies have shown that we are essentially, by the metrics of sort of the folks that do this work, where we have what they consider adequate parking. And so maybe the problem is really that we have a difficulty in actually finding where the open spot is. So she also mentioned, and I think this idea maybe has been championed by Mr. Walters, is the idea of coming up with, or we're getting grant money to fund, say, putting sensors at all the parking spots. So similar to if you've been to the SeaTac airport, as you approach, say, downtown from a main arterial, there's a sign that says how many parking spots are currently available on 4th Street, 5th Street, 6th Street, 7th Street. Something like that. So essentially, there are the spots. You get the driver to the spot faster with that sort of thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah.
Yeah, I believe it is a matter, a lot of it is perception. How many of you have ever gone to Seattle and gone to the museum or Pike Place Market and had to park far away? Park in front of the shop we want to go to, we think, oh my goodness, there's no parking. So I believe we need a really good community campaign, and I would combine that with an environmental approach, encouraging bicycle travel or parking farther away and walking. I mean, people wear their Fitbits to get their 10,000 steps, but we don't want to park far away from our destination. I would say what parking is left on commercial, I would make it handicapped only. Obviously, there's some people that walking is a challenge. I do think long-term, we've got to plan for a parking structure. And I think I've seen public-private projects that have to be really well planned and thought out, but in the long run, they can be revenue neutral. And I think it'd be wonderful for Anacortes to have a trolley to bring people around the city, and maybe they would go to new places that they weren't familiar with. And we just need a community challenge, some kind of incentive to, we could probably get an organization to sponsor. Make it fun, log how many times you walk or bike, and enter to win a shopping trip. Well, there you go.
Thank you. Carolyn.
Thank you, Sarah. I really like your ideas. I am a huge fan of multimodal transportation, and one of the things that we have now that I helped initiate are the bike corrals. There are 3 of those downtown, centrally located, with 6 bike racks that each accommodate 12 bicycles. These can be pedal bikes, these can be electric bikes, and you have in the space of 1 parking space room for 12, not 1 car. So I think that we need to sort of rethink a little bit, reframe that conversation. With the advent of motorized bicycles, we're seeing way more of those on the roads too. So anything that can help people get out of their cars, I'm a fan of. We have been working as a city on bicycle pedestrian improvements, bicycle lanes, bicycle connectors, and I think that that is also going to be helpful down as we move forward down the line. We also have found, the parking study's been mentioned, and the mayor convened a parking group of concerned citizens and business owners a couple of years ago, and I was fortunate to sit into one of those meetings. And one of the findings was that a lot of times employees are parking in spots that might better be occupied by shoppers. And when our planning director, Don Musemer, went downtown with a friendly letter to business owners, it had an immediate result, and people were very happy that those problems subsided. So there are some things like that too, some smaller scale things. But I agree we need to look to the future. Perhaps we will need some kind of a parking structure. But I would encourage everyone, if you can, it's great to walk, it's great to bike, it's great to share rides. Thank you.
Thank you. Anthony.
Okay, great. I was hoping you were going to call on me. Just kidding. Now, but, you know, I totally agree again with much of what was already said. You know, for me, a few years back, many of you may not know, but I was in a horrific accident, crushed bones, you know, really struggled with walking, and had to work my way back over this last 5 years. And even now, you know, it's still a bit of a struggle. And what I'm saying is I understand when we have the demographic group that we do in our town wanting sometimes to be as close as we are to, you know, the parking and the place that we're going. So, you know, I'm fully supportive of trying to figure out what can we do. I agree that, you know, in some cases where we have parallel parking, we can go in slanted parking, angled parking. Those are things that we can do. And also at the same time, you know, we're looking at parking garage, parking designation spots, you know, working with employees to lend that spot for someone else that may need it. So there are a number of things that we need to work on within the city. This is an issue that keeps coming up. It does have the city's attention. We've made some attempts to try to resolve it, but it seems that it will take up a higher priority for us to work on, whether it's a committee or whether it's working on solutions that we may each find for bringing this forward. It is an issue. But again, you know, when I see now that coming from the East Coast and having a traffic jam of an hour and a half, and now that I'm in Anacortes, I see 15 cars, I'm wondering what's going on. But anyway, it's a good issue, and I promise you, we look forward to addressing it as a council and as a team. Thank you.
Thank you all for participating. And as you grab your name tents and items, please give them a round of applause. get us started with introductions, we'll allot 2 minutes per reply. We'll start with Ryan.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Ryan Walters. I'm running to be your next mayor. I grew up in Anacortes. I graduated from Anacortes High School. My family has been here for 5 generations, and until I came along, they were fairly low-key. I'm a former Skagit County deputy prosecutor. I'm a land use attorney. Currently, I'm the planning director for the Samish Indian Nation, and I'm the most senior member of the Anacortes City Council. I was elected about 10 years ago, and in that time, I did a 2-year term as mayor pro tem. I've served on the planning, the public works, the finance, the fiber, the IT, the housing and community services committees. And I've been at the forefront of the progress that we've made here in Anacortes, repairing our roads and infrastructure, rebooting our comprehensive plan and our zoning code, building our new fiber internet service, and make sure that it got started on a strong financial and operational footing. I've written legislation to protect our forest lands, and I've been substantially involved in our critical areas update to protect sensitive areas while providing for the types of development that are appropriate near those areas. I helped write our resolution on inclusion because everyone who lives in our community should feel welcome and should be defended against hate speech. And I was the driver behind getting our affordable housing ballot measure onto the ballot to make housing more affordable in our community so that we can have a whole community here, so that people who work here can also live here. I have a strong commitment to environmental protection, to transparency, to fiscal responsibility, to diversity and inclusion, to performance and accountability, and to long-term planning. So in the next 4 years as mayor, I would work on housing affordability and homelessness and on invigorating downtown Commercial Avenue. I want to reduce utility bill costs for people that especially are on fixed incomes, and I want to reform and transform Anacortes city government to make Anacortes the leader in transparency, efficiency, and cutting-edge delivery of the services that so many of us need. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy.
Hi. Thank you all for being here. My name is Tammy, and I'm running for mayor. I am number 5 of 10 kids, an Iraq War veteran, a professional volunteer, an entrepreneur, and a mom of 3 brave girls. I'm also a suicide attempt survivor. I'm running for mayor for several reasons, but the biggest one is because for too long, people with mental health disabilities have largely been underrepresented in politics. And I just want to clarify, known and spoken about mental health issues. As mayor, I want to work closely with the police department to integrate more social workers in the police force with Compass Health so that when crews show up, they can assess the situation and work good. Because you cannot rationalize with a psychotic break, and coming into those situations is not going to be safe for anybody. I want to close the communication gap between government and our people. The people I've been talking to, they're finding out about things after the fact, and how can people show up if they're not sure about what's going on? But most of all, please remember that you never know why people are the way they are, and we need to be nicer than we think is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Miller. I'm running for mayor, and after more than 30 years in public service and over a decade serving the city of Anacortes on the Planning Commission and on City Council, I'm ready to lead a dedicated group of public servants while representing our amazing community. I hope to continue serving the people of Anacortes, working hard to better the place our family has been blessed to call home for so many years. I believe my extensive and diverse background with the Navy, the city, and the private sector is a great fit for my future role in municipal executive leadership. I hope to continue to bring practical, professional, efficient, and inclusive solutions to our city's opportunities and challenges without ideological or political bias. I've been making important decisions my whole life in team environments, and I've always tried to do the right thing the first time every time. I believe my varied experience allows for more thoughtful listening and provides the framework for asking the right questions. And one of the highlights of my naval career, besides the excitement of flying on and off aircraft carriers and a number of combat deployments, I was the executive officer of Naval Air Station Whidbey Island, where I ran the day-to-day operations with over 400 direct report employees, both military and civilian, multiple departments, including police, fire, public works, parks and recreation, housing, religious services, and retail activities, and an airport, with a search and rescue unit responsible for saving dozens of lives in the Pacific Northwest. I will continue to bring my seasoned, reasoned decision-making ability to our community that needs smart, planned growth in housing and jobs, timely infrastructure improvements, including street repair, and quality of life enhancements that starts with public safety and supporting our police. And it continues with improved people connectors to our shorelines and boating community, and ends with preservations of our parks, forest lands, and open space. My administration will always be open, transparent, and citizen-focused. Thank you.
Thank you. For the questions for the mayoral candidates, they will be given 2 minutes each to reply. Question number 1. The mayor of Anacortes directly supervises a number of department heads within the city's organizational structure. What experience have you had in organizational management, specifically personnel? Do you believe the city needs organizational change? If so, where? And we'll begin with Ryan.
Thank you. Yes, I was assistant director of the Skagit County Planning Department, 30 employees, $3 million budget. 5 years total there in local government planning departments, 11 years in county government, working closely with the county commissioners and the county administrator and the finance director. Skagit County has 600 employees. It's a big operation. And the work that the county does mirrors a lot of the work that the city does in function, but also in form. And that is an extraordinarily diverse and yet still very relevant experience to bring to the city of Anacortes. The mayor is the person who articulates a vision, and we have 13 departments, depending on how you count. We do a lot of different things here at the city of Anacortes. So the mayor needs to inspire department heads, needs to manage and supervise those department heads. But the mayor also, like all managers or executives, has a certain span of control. And the span of control for complex operations is usually not 13. It should be something more like 6. I would bring in a management team. I would create that management team from the existing city attorney, the HR director, and the finance director, so that when we make decisions, we have all of those inputs in personnel, in finance, and in the law, and that those people are able to speak for the mayor's office on those sections for those subject matter experts. It's important that the mayor have a good team to run the departments, because the departments are running their own organizations and they have a job to do on their own. I see the need for some change, a little bit of tweaking in the organizational structure. I wouldn't necessarily pursue a lot, but we do have a lot of initiatives that we need to pursue, and we need to have the structure to make that happen.
Thank you. Matt.
Well, it's a great question. It's hard to know where to start. Certainly as a career naval officer, you get thrust into leadership positions at a very young age and responsible for millions of dollars of equipment and responsible for lives of other folks in a very challenging environment. I would say my biggest leadership experience that prepares me for the job, like I mentioned in my opener, I was the executive officer, civilian equivalent, chief operating officer, CEO of Naval Air Station Whidbey Island. You may have heard of it. It's right down the road. In fact, I'm sure you've heard of it literally. That operation, again, I had police department, fire department, public works, recreation department, all of the same departments running a city. We had 10,000, there are 10,000 personnel there, 8,000 of military, 2,000 civilians, And again, I think some people have the perception of the military, you just, bark out an order and people will come forward. Not even close. In my 22 years career, you're still trying to influence people to get the job done. But again, some of the most rewarding parts of that, having 400 direct reports, obviously a lot of personnel issues that I have experience dealing with, and that helps prepare you. You can't just jump right into a job, leading a group of great professionals that we have in the city of Anacortes without having that experience. It's hard when you have your first employee issue that comes up to think about all the great vision stuff that you wanted to put together when you're challenged with some employee issues. So again, having that experience, that background, again, a large organization, billions of dollars of national and international assets over at Whidbey Island, I think has prepared me well. And since they haven't turned the mic off on me yet, just having the responsibility of launching that search and rescue helicopter, at 2 in the morning at whatever time to save lives in the Pacific Northwest was incredibly rewarding. Thanks.
Thank you. Tammy.
I'll start with if I believe the city needs an organizational change. Since I decided to run for mayor, I've been watching past city councils. I've been watching these two. And the more I learn about them, the more I like them, and the more I'm impressed with the city and how it's been run. I think that the city of Anacortes is a very special place, and how the leadership has very much reflected how it's been. My experience when I was in Iraq, we were on a joint task force, and we had soldiers from all over the world. And I was in the personnel department, and we had to manage all the soldiers coming in, going out on trips. And at a very young age, before I could drink, I was learning about things I never probably wanted to know about. And it's those lessons that I learned. We can't lose the people on the way to the policies. And sometimes the big PowerPoint issue, it looks great on PowerPoint, and as it gets down to the people, we lose it. And so I'm grateful for the lessons. Also in Nicaragua, we were on a nation building mission, and again, I was processing and out processing all the soldiers coming in and out. And so I've served all across the world, and I want to bring that love of people and service here to Anacortes. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 2. What role should the city play in response to homeless people on the public streets, including the leaving of garbage and needles? We'll begin with Tammy.
This one is important to me, and I've been spending some time meeting with people who are currently without a house, and I asked this lady, I said, how does it make you feel when people say, we don't want you on our street? And she said, we don't want to be on the street either. And as I talked with her, I took her for a ride up to Mount Erie, and as she overlooked, they don't get to see the beauty we see. They don't get to enjoy the magic of this place because they're stuck in survival. And she said, if people could just not judge us and not treat us so harshly. And I feel that we do have a role, and we should talk to them and see their ideas. And as I work with more and more homeless, they want to go back and help. They want to move up, and they want to go back and help. And sometimes if you haven't been in a situation, it's hard to know how to help. And I feel like my life experiences, I haven't always been successful. I haven't led great things, but I've learned empathy and compassion by the hard things that I've overcome over and over again. And coming out of COVID, I feel like more than ever, we need strong, caring people to step up. And that's where I want to do, is bring the homeless and step them up so that they can enjoy the magic of this place as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan.
Well, to take the second part of the question first, we ought not to tolerate at all garbage or needles on our streets. Allowing that kind of stuff to occur and fester is a snowball effect. So if necessary, we should have city staff go clean it up, number one, because the most important thing is not to allow it to sit there on the streets. And then we also need to deal with the source of the problem. Homelessness is not against the law, nor should it be. But it's also not a license to break the law. We have drug laws, we should enforce drug laws. But if someone is living on the street, if someone is parked on the street, we do need to have compassion for that person. And the situation that we're faced with right now is people that are homeless that were and are residents of Anacortes. They're not people that came in from outside that were attracted to Anacortes because of our lovely T Avenue. They are, in fact, our people. And we need to deal with them compassionately. We need to help them get services. We need to be sophisticated in the way that we do that. We do have a social worker that we have contracted with who works out of the family center and is providing services. We also have the police down there frequently. And I've spoken with members of the homeless community on T Avenue, and we've been able to get some of them over to, say, the Burlington First Steps Center. And those are good options. But we also need to ensure that no one street in Anacortes is overly burdened. T Avenue shouldn't be overly burdened. Bellingham has an ordinance that prohibits sleeping in their downtown core, and I would be supportive of that in Anacortes because I don't want to negatively impact the businesses in our downtown, nor those on T Avenue. So it's a complicated question, but it needs a compassionate response.
Thank you. Matt.
Well, if I have been in the unfortunate position to be without a home, I'd rather live on T Avenue than some of the other major cities. So I think the first part in understanding and trying to solve this very challenging problem is actually understanding the problem. We did a homeless count, and the official numbers in Anacortes, 2019, 23 Anacortes Family Center, which, by the way, is a fantastic organization, not a low-barrier shelter that gets people going in the right direction. Can't say enough great things about what they do and how we are happy to partner with them in the city. But back in 2019, there was 23 that Anacortes Family Center was sheltering, and 16 in a winter shelter, and then 9 chronically homeless. But to get to back to the T Avenue problem, I've also been out there. I've also been out there with the police department, and in fact, yes, some of them are citizens, and we absolutely need to take care of them. We need to get them the right services. But the first thing is you cannot live on the street. You and I, we can't live on the street. It's not fair to everybody who's participating. So we've got to help them first. We greet everybody in Anacortes with compassion and welcoming. But it's not a good place to come if you don't have a job or a house. The average house price is $500,000. And the one gentleman that I was engaged with on the street was actually not from Anacortes. He used up 6 months or 3 months of housing vouchers, some camping sites, and then ultimately we finally were able to cite him and get him off of T Avenue. But it's a long process as we work through welcoming, helping. But then when you get to the point where they don't want help, we as a community invested in 2013 a fantastic justice center, and we'll talk about that later.
Thank you. Question number 3. What are your assessments of our city's police department and police union? What do you think we need to improve or reform, if anything? And we'll begin with Matt.
Again, finishing up on being able to work with our police department, dealing with some of the complaints that all of us have been receiving in the city about folks leaving. I've never seen a more compassionate group of folks engaging with some people who are in very challenging situations. I think the numbers are about 60% of those in some of those situations that are unsheltered have some substance abuse or mental health issues, and it's hard to tell any which day which one is driving the bus. And for a police officer to engage in that situation, it takes a tremendous amount of compassion and training, which they have to have hours and hours of training, de-escalation training, and essentially how to get those folks to the right services, and it's just amazing. So to really answer the question, I wouldn't do anything to reform our police department. They are already faced with a number of challenges from various new regulations from the state about use of force, and our police department has never used respiratory restraints. Our police department is certified. Some of the challenges with trying to have blanket problems at all police departments in the state of Washington is when you have such a great police department like Anacortes, they are having to figure out what other departments, when they work with, how their policies affect how they might, the duty to intervene, for example. And that duty to intervene, again, just adds a significant amount of training. So even in my 2022 budget as a council member, I proposed adding an additional commissioned police officer to help the police department with those additional training requirements. So again, they do a fantastic job. They deserve our support. They always have my support, and they do a great work.
Thank you. Ryan.
Anacortes does have an excellent police department. It's an accredited department. It's the result of a lot of work by a lot of different police chiefs, and it's come a long way from where we were written up in the Seattle Times in the 80s for the quality of our police department. I'm very supportive of fully staffing our police department. It's an open question what that number should be. We have an adopted level of service in our comprehensive plan that would actually yield many more officers than we have now or have ever had. But the big problems that we are facing right now are not particularly police functions. Homelessness and mental health, we rely on the police because they're our go-tos. But we need more tools in the toolbox to address those issues, and we need to free up police time to do police work. We have a missing persons case in Anacortes. We need police man-hours in order to work that case. So if there are opportunities to pursue alternative pathways, for example, the community paramedic position that we just created in the fire department that can take care of some 911 calls that are repetitive and consume tremendous amounts of police time, that would be an avenue we ought to explore to be more efficient with our existing resources. We are going to see, and because the legislature has passed, new regulations governing what police can do, especially in the area of callers or complainants that have mental health issues. And so it is going to force us to evolve the way we respond to mental health issues, and we don't have a lot of good options because there's not a lot of mental health care available. So we need to push on that lever as much as we do need to do anything inside the police department, because our police department is working well. We do need to make sure that they have sufficient support to continue that job.
Thank you. Tammy.
So this is on my list to work out this week. Every day I'm learning more and more I need to learn about, and so that is the joy of running. And I'm excited to meet with some people this week where I can learn more about it. I know some of the citizens that I have talked to do have some concerns about, of course, Laney not being found, and that's come up. A few people I've talked to also that they can't arrest people with drug possession. I think that's causing more and more issues on the street, and there's just lots of things the citizens are more concerned about that they have brought up to me. My overall feeling of the department, those that I have met, I feel like they're friendly and nice, and it's a good thing we got going. It's just we'll work with them to figure out what the citizens want and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 4. Oh, excuse me. We are on to the candidate-to-candidate questions. Each of you will be given 1 minute to ask a question of your opponent. Please limit your response to 1 minute, and we will begin with Matt.
So my question is, as a city council member, I have not voted for the 1% increase in property taxes for the past 3 years for a variety of reasons, including CPI inflator variables and a general appetite for increased government spending. My question is, are you in favor of keeping the 1% property tax levy lid, which is the current state law, or would you like to see counties, cities, and other taxing districts able to collect a higher than the 1% property tax levy lid?
Thank you. Ryan will answer first, and then Tammy.
That's an interesting question. Property tax is one of the most stable revenue sources that cities have, and property tax is widely misunderstood because it is budget-based, so it doesn't rise each year when your assessments go up, as hard as that is to believe. If we take the 1% allowed lift each year, we barely keep up with inflation, and that only accounts for that property tax and not our other revenue sources. When inflation is greater than 1%, as it frequently is, we lose ground. So if cities are not to go bankrupt, because that's the direction that this necessarily takes us in, we've got to have a mechanism to either keep up with inflation, and that's what that 1% helps us do, or provide us some other mechanism for collecting revenue that is stable and allows us to keep providing the services that we want. So I'm in favor of leaving that alone as it is today.
I'm in favor of leaving that alone. And I think there's lots of ways that we're getting income more and more. Once Ziply gets all worked in, that will be income producing, and I'm in favor of keeping it as it is. This is not my area of expertise, and I will research and get better opinions as I learn and grow. I'm great. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, Ryan can ask his question.
The City Council adopted a maritime strategic plan in 2018, jointly developed with the Port and with EDAS, our Economic Development Association of Skagit County. Spent a lot of time on it. Each entity ended up adopting it. And we did that because we realized that we have a real opportunity and a strength here in Anacortes, and that's our maritime sector and our working waterfront. I'm supposed to be using this time for a question, so the question is, what measures should we prioritize from that plan for implementation? Or beyond that, what should we do to help support our maritime economy, industry, and sector here in Anacortes?
Thank you. We'll have Tammy answer first.
Great question. I believe that I don't have a good answer for this, and I will leave the time for Matt to answer very nicely.
Thank you. Matt?
Thank you. I don't know if I wanted extra time. That was a very good question. No, it's a great question because it highlights how important the maritime, our maritime heritage is to Anacortes. Specifically, recreational boating, now we are the #1 destination for recreational boaters. Many of you here probably came to move to Anacortes because maybe the first time you came here was recreational boating. So it's a huge part. Having a business downtown for 15 years, we realized how incredibly important the maritime community is. And not at the boat building industry, Dakota Creek Industries. So having that connection is really important. Balancing that connection with what we sometimes call our coastal retirees is really important. And it's going to be really important as MJB starts developing their property on the shoreline to make sure we balance that center of gravity with that new development with our downtown and making those people connectors with our maritime community and our downtown. Thanks.
Thank you. Now is the time for Tammy to ask her question.
All right. My question is, I want to hear a trial that you've overcome and how it's helped you and how it will help you as a mayor connecting to our people.
Thank you. First reply will be from Matt.
In a long career, especially in aviation, I can think of so many trials to overcome and so many friends that were lost at a young age in that business. And what it has taught me, number one, is to love life and to really live for them. I felt like when I retired from the military, I won the lottery. And having that opportunity to serve and to continue to serve in my community and raise a family here. And I'd like to point out that my daughter is here, hasn't been back in Anacortes for 2 years, so very happy that she's here. But having seen loss at such a young age, to include witnessing just terrific accidents, the love for life and the love for people and a love for this community, I will devote myself to making sure it's a better place for all of us to live.
Thank you. Ryan.
Could you repeat the question?
What is a big trial that you have overcome, and how will you use that to connect to our people, the people of our city, as mayor?
All right, well, I feel less bad now about asking you that maritime strategic plan question.
I had two questions.
You know, I think actually the past 15 or so months were a pretty significant trial, obviously for all of us, and some of us much more than others, and some of us much more than me. But it was still a trial for, I think, every single person. And for me, among other things, my aunt died during COVID, and we couldn't have a funeral for her. I was faced with the prospect of not having the woman who is now my fiance and is here in the second row, with me during what could have been an extended work from home order. But we dealt with that. We moved her into my house. But it was such a trying period, and it was something that so many of us didn't deal with that well. And we will be, I think, working through that as a community and as a nation for quite some time still. We need to get back to where we were with civility and participation. I know a lot of us are really eager to participate in our community again, and I'm very grateful for that because it is so great, and it's so great to see all your faces here tonight. I see my time. Thank you.
Thank you all for participating. Please give them a round of applause. Our goal today was to present a fair and impartial format that will aid citizens in their decision-making process. Your vote is extremely important. Weigh your choices carefully, and please remember to vote. I would like to do a couple acknowledgements. Thank yous to our candidates. Best of luck to all of you. To our Government Affairs Committee and Chamber staff for their work on behalf of the Chamber and business community. To our partners, the City of Anacortes, for use of this facility and technology. To our volunteers, Harriet and Margaret from the League of Women Voters. To our volunteers from the AAUW, Bunny and Sally. And to Mitchell with the City of Anacortes for airing this forum on Comcast Channel 10 and live streaming on YouTube for us. We do have a couple upcoming events for the Chamber. We also have the General Election Candidates Forum. Please put on your calendar for October 6th. We'll also be here. We have a Chamber Board meet and greet, July 22nd. A ribbon cutting at Heartful Retreats on the 23rd. And we are bringing back the Chamber luncheons starting August 12th. And we'll do a candidate roundtable on September 9th. Thank you all for coming, and please remember to vote on August 3rd.